why are they better? So I'll just say one of the misconceptions I hear all the time are that this is a way to like select for resistance to Varroa because they're hygienic, and then you heard today Varroa sensitive hygiene, and now we're doing a hygienic test. So
did Shepard say that if they pass this test that there's no American foul brood?
yeah, that's it. So just remember that this hygienic testing, this hygienic behavior, hygienic testing has nothing to do with Varroa resistance. So this is completely different than Varroa sensitive hygiene. So this isn't going to help you with your Varroa issues. It's pretty much, I used to think that it was related to chalk brood also, but I had that assumption and I looked it up, and people have shown that it has no impact really on their resistance or their likelihood of coming down with chalk brood. Hygienic behavior is not going to solve that problem either. It's pretty much solely related to foul brood, and mainly American foul brood. That's because it's like spore forming. And so what this does is, and the reason why we're killing the brood is to challenge or test a colony's like propensity or ability to detect the brood is dead or that something's wrong underneath that capping, and to remove it before the foul brood sporulates and spreads spores all over the hive. So they've shown that you select a bunch of colonies for hygienic behavior, that behavior gets really strong in those colonies, and a bunch of colonies you don't select for it and their hygienic behavior is really low, and then you throw foul brood spores in all those hives. The ones that are very hygienic will never come down, they'll never show symptoms of foul brood. The ones that don't have this high level of genetic behavior will all come down with nasty, gross foul brood. So that's the main thing, is for the use of foul brood, and hopefully to limit or eliminate the use of antibiotics.
So is it just American or European as well?
Yeah, so I think it's mainly, I think it helps with European foul brood, but we see cases of European foul brood in this stuff. We rarely see American foul brood. So I think it's not as useful in reducing European foul brood.
That's because it's capped out.
Yeah, and it doesn't spread with spores either. So.
Is there a age range for bees that do most of the cleaning?
Yeah, I bet there is, but I don't know.
Somewhere like a middle age.
It seems like house bees would be, I guess. Yeah, the gray, bigger bees, house bees.
They tend to be the younger bees, So as they transition through age, it's I can't remember the exact term for it, but younger bees, they hatch out, they start cleaning, then they move into more foraging roles, then to guard roles.
Yeah. So it's those house bees that are doing it. Yeah, so it's mainly for foul brood, and so there's probably more ways to do it, as you can imagine, but there's three kind of main ways that people do this hygienic testing. And I think what often scares people off from trying this in their selection program is this right here, like an expensive liquid nitrogen tank. Where am I going to get liquid nitrogen? How am I going to transport it? And this tank is fairly expensive. What's that?
Such a fun toy.
It is a fun toy. Yeah, you can make like fancy cocktails and stuff like that. But yeah, so these tanks are expensive, but you can, I think in some cases, if there's a cattle breeding operation near you, they might let you lend you out an old tank. A styrofoam container like this will hold liquid nitrogen for hours and hours, and liquid nitrogen is fairly inexpensive. It's here on campus.
What about dry
$1
ice?
a liter.
What's available at Walmart?
Yeah, so you can use dry ice, but what you have to do is the second of three ways to do this hygienic testing, which is to cut out brood and then freeze it and then put it back in your colony. So you could use use dry ice and put the brood on it a couple hours probably. It's amazing how resistant pupa are. Like eggs and larvae are very fragile, but pupa can resist quite a bit, really. And so if you don't have plastic foundation, you can cut out a section. You can put it in your freezer at home overnight. You could use dry ice, which would cut the time down quite a bit probably, but you want to make sure it's really, really frozen.
But if you put it at 0 degrees in a freezer for 12 hours, that's enough?
Yeah, that should be plenty. Yeah, so the problem is a lot of people have foundation. It makes it a nightmare to cut it out. I mean, I've done it before, but I've used a rotozip to get it out. So then the third way is called a pinprick test, and I'm pretty sure this is what they did before they ever even started using the freeze kill brood. So you use a pin and you poke out like 100 cells or 200 cells in the brood, and so you're killing that pupa by poking it with a pin. It's called the pin prick test. Does anyone know why maybe some people don't do that? Or why they moved away from that largely?
Time consuming. Kind of uncapping the caps.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there you go. That's pretty much exactly why, because you're giving them like a mechanical signal also. And really what you're trying to test for is their ability to sense through a perfectly normal cap and detect if something's wrong and remove it. But so people, you know, I don't know if it's ever been shown. Have you ever heard of anything like where they compared the two necessarily? So this is probably all just like gossip in the bee world, you know, but the idea is that maybe they can mechanically see or sense that the capping is disturbed with that hole in it, or it makes it easier for them to detect, and then they remove it. Whereas maybe they're not as hygienic as they may seem because they just figured out that there's a hole in it instead. So the freeze brood kill test doesn't give them any signal other than like a dead pupa inside the capping. If that makes sense. Okay. It's hard doing two groups because then I don't know if what am I missing? Okay, so those are the three ways, right? And I shouldn't be like so down on the pinprick test because I think that's better than not doing anything at all. Like if you want to select for hygienic behavior and you don't want to mess with liquid nitrogen and you have plastic foundation, you can do it. I mean, we had a visitor from New Zealand. He manages fairly sophisticated bee breeding, commercial queen production, commercial queen breeding. They're not producers. They produce like breeding stock for a producer, so they're, you know, a pretty high level breeding thing, and they use the pin prick test. And, you know, they're using it on a commercial scale, really. So it works, and it'll get you, you know, close to where you want to be for sure. But it's the same concept, right? So today we're not going to do the pin prick test. We'll do the freeze brood test. Okay, so let's do it. Shows us stronger. This will be fun. Okay, so the other thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is that you're testing colonies against each other, and so you want to try to eliminate like factors other than their ability to detect that something's wrong. You guys had a hard time finding queens, right? Isn't she always on the second frame you look at?
I wish. Only.
Master number 2.
Jeez. I need that color marker.
Yeah, and so this isn't a color mark. I don't know if you guys found a mark. So this is a tagged numbered queen.
Oh, okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about marking queens and stuff like
I
that.
can see it from
So
here.
this is a-
Yeah, that's pretty.
I like that.
Yeah.
Red was wearing off last year.
That hot pink is good.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is, like, if you're going to be producing queens and stuff, is you do have to get proficient really at handling queens, like with your fingers and picking them up and manipulating them. So once you're, like, comfortable holding a queen and stuff, it's not too hard. You get... Yeah. Once you pin them down. So the thing is that you're comparing between hives. So you kind of have to keep really good sort of records. And I guess that's to say, I hope you kind of hear that a bunch over these next 2 days. And like, I'm hoping she kind of talked about scoring, and I know Sue talked about scoring. So that's keeping records, like on whatever kind of scale you're going to do and whatever you're interested in. But in addition, so things like this hygienic testing is, it's not a fair comparison, say, to like do a hygienic test on this hive with 10 frames of bees versus that hive with 18 frames of bees and that one with 12. And so you're going to have variation in hive strength. And so you want to record that on like the day you do your hygienic testing, so that if that one with 4 frames of bees is 90% hygienic and this one with 12 frames of bees is 85% hygienic, that one's probably way better as far as hygienic behavior, right? Maybe you don't want it because it's only 4 frames of bees and there's something else wrong with it, but you do want to be able to weigh those hygienic scores in comparison to the strength of the hive. So you don't record that, you're not going to be able to like keep that in mind when you're looking at the final scores. Okay, and then ideally you're trying to choose some capped brood that's fairly tight. You don't want to like do a hygienic test on like the middle of sort of a shotgunny pattern where you have a bunch of missing cells.
What's your opinion on those missing cells? Is that just a bad queen, or is that something else?
If it was on multiple frames, so if it looked like this on every capped frame, then I would be concerned. This could be like, for example, most of this has got nectar in it. It could be that they are, plugging that up with nectar, and so she couldn't lay in it. There's already nectar.
Which could be like an early swarm warning.
Yeah. It also could be that maybe these guys are super hygienic and they had foul brood and they clean that stuff out. So you don't want to like freeze a bunch of bees so you get the bees off of it with a brush or shake it. And then generally what we're doing, the other thing is as far as keeping things consistent. So you want to know how strong they are, and then you also want to try to do everything on the same day or within a few days. So it wouldn't be fair if I did these 5 hives today and it's beautiful and there's canola blooming, and then I can't get around to those until 2 weeks from now, and all that bloom is done on the canola, and they're like much more conservative, and there's nothing coming in. That's just not a fair comparison. Okay, so I'm just gonna set this. Actually, I'll set it up here so you guys can see it. We use these like Campbell soup cans, but a lot of people really like PVC pipe, about the same sort of diameter, and then they shave the edge so it's kind of nice and sharp, and you push it down in there. And then so just choose a section that's got sort of maybe the fewest number of missing cells, and then you just press it in there. I like to put just a tiny bit of water in here, and that helps keep the liquid nitrogen from leaking out around the edge of the can. So you guys can see there. So just enough, it's not even enough water to cover the brood. It just sinks in around the edges, and you can even see the water leaking through there. So what happens is when you don't do that, and even when you do, sometimes it doesn't work perfect, because you get the liquid nitrogen leaking out of there, and then you get, instead of frozen brood in that tight can, you get frozen brood like way outside the can. Okay, so it's kind of easier to use. Sometimes you just pour the liquid into like a styrofoam container like that and pour it out of that. And I'm always kind of surprised at how much liquid nitrogen it takes to kill this stuff. And it kind of goes back to how tough they are. So I pour a little bit in there to get it frozen. You can see it leaking out a little bit right here. But that water also like expands and it seals it up pretty good. See, so it's freezing that water and it's trying to bubble out, but it is getting blocked. So then you have like a nice seal. It's holding liquid nitrogen. And then go ahead and fill it like close to halfway. So you would think, I mean, that's probably enough to kill that brood, but it's not. That brood would be perfectly fine. And then you get a bunch of false, you're like, oh man, these bees aren't hygienic at all because they didn't clean out the cells. So it's because they're not dead. So maybe, maybe it's a quarter of a can or a third of a can like this. You can, if you do too much, what you do is then you get it freezes the brood on the other side of the can too. And so you'll pull out that frame and you'll see on both sides they've cleaned out the brood. Yeah, so you guys.
Yeah, worry about getting that on your home for sure, right?
It's more about getting it on your shoes. So, like a mesh type sneaker can be a real problem with it splashes, and the reason is because cotton absorbs it really well, and then it holds that liquid nitrogen against your skin. So otherwise, you don't have to like worry about getting it on your skin. Right? Like you can. So it's not dangerous, and it's 70 or whatever. 80% of our air is nitrogen, so it's not like a dangerous gas. The problem is if it soaks in your clothes and it's held tight against your skin, it'll burn you for sure. It'll burn you every time. So if you have a bunch of these, it's actually really fast. I mean, it seems like you're watching paint dry now, but if we were gonna do this whole yard, we've done that, poured the liquid in, probably threw the lid back on this or whatever, and just left that there, and then going on the next one and do that. And so then you just have a series of frames, and you get far enough ahead, you come back, and this one's thawed out, you pull the can off. The other thing that we do, I'm sure other people do it this way too, is that I don't want to stand out here getting sunburn counting the cells inside that can or counting the number missing. So we take a picture, we just carry a camera with us, and we take a picture of the hive number. You snap a picture of the hive number. Once we pull this can off, you snap a picture of the brood pattern inside that can, and you just do that. Then, then drinking a beer in front of your computer, you can count the number. So then maybe the first time you use the same size can or whatever, you count how many cells total there are under that can, and you just create an Excel sheet with a column of total number of cells in the can. Then I just count the number missing. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cells that aren't capped in there. Then you have a column for missing cells. You put 10. Then you say, then you just have an equation that automatically generates the number of capped cells under that can. Then when you come back 24 hours later to check it, then you do the same thing, snap a picture, go home, have a glass of wine in front of the computer, count how many, ideally when they get hygienic, you just count how many they didn't remove, and you put that in the next column, and then you just generate a % score of the total number of cells with the total that they removed, and then you get a % score.
What's a good number and a bad number?
See, and that's all relative because it's within your operation. So, for example, when this program first started, before I ever came, they ordered a whole bunch of queens from queen producers all over, and they got them going. They did this hygienic testing, and they started with a 48-hour test because at 24 hours, nobody was like cleaning stuff out. So you did 48-hour test, and then you get a range of anything from they remove 20% to 80% or something within 48 hours, right? Then you choose those higher ones as your drone mothers and your queen mothers. You do your breeding. And then what happened was eventually after a few generations of that, at 48 hours, everybody's removing 100% of the brood and you have nothing to compare to. So then you move to a 24-hour test and you make things tougher on them. Then you get that spread again of anywhere from 30% to 100%, and then you select for that in that time window. Okay, so now it's like it's really is like watching paint dry. So now the problem is you can't like just go and pull this out of here. So it's frozen there. So I could rip it off, but it'll just take out all the brood that's inside there, and it'll be for nothing. So you have to kind of sit there and wait, or that's why I said normally just go on and we're down the yard, and we come back, and when this frost is off of it, then this can pulls off. And you get the brood pattern.
You put more water in.
That's what we all should have done with the ice cream this afternoon. Just
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Is this your water bottle?
No, not mine.
It's not a whole lot.
Water's free.
We'll see how many of those bees come back to life. No, they're not going to come back.
not your first rodeo with it, huh?
No. It is kind of, even the vapor will kill a few bees if you're
Surprised.
That's tough.
If you figured out how to freeze whole bees and bring them back to life, I got a job.
There you go.
Yeah,
What I'll be doing.
And
not
then
just you.
Right.
I think they can do that with frogs.
I have heard that a little.
You
But
can
I don't
freeze
know how,
butterflies.
there's different levels of what people call frozen. So.
That's true.
Not down low.
So for example, so one of the things I work on is freezing semen, right? So if you can, so we freeze semen, we freeze it down to the say minus 40, and then we put it in liquid nitrogen. So people would call minus 40 frozen, right? And it's pretty frozen. But if you kept it at minus 40, it wouldn't last very long. The viability would go downhill real fast. So frozen has to be below minus 120 degrees, and that's when